Picture this. An airliner full of passengers, out of control at 17,000 feet, and the pilot is outside of the airplane. In the cockpit, terrified flight attendants are clinging to his legs. If he slips from their grasp, the captain's body could be sucked into the engine and bring down the whole plane. At the controls, a young co-pilot is fighting to get the aircraft to the nearest airport. The lives of 87 passengers and crew are hanging by a thread. We're about to experience what happens when the person flying your plane suddenly finds himself on the wrong side of the windshield. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for some extreme turbulence, because this is Final Boarding Call. Hello, and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I am your disaster-obsessed host, Alice, and I am joined by my reluctant homebody husband, Zach. Zach, say hi to the people.
Hello, everyone.
Before we dive in, a quick reminder to our listeners, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody buckle up, because today's story is truly one of the most unbelievable aviation incidents in history. It's honestly one of the most jaw-dropping flying stories of all time, one that is still hard to believe even decades later. This episode is based on extensive research from multiple sources, but my primary source is Mayday Air Crash Investigation, which I loved, specifically Season 2, Episode 1, which is titled Blowout. All resources will be referenced in the show notes. All right, Zach, are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. I think the people, whoever may listen to this, if anybody ever, they would just find it incredibly ironic how often you fly and you're obsessed with crashes.
I know, I guess I didn't explain that. Yeah. I fly 2 to 3 times a month. I'm usually on an airplane 4 to 6 times every single month. So that's like a pretty decent amount of flying. Today I flew, actually. I came home from Dallas, and I'm writing another episode while I am on my airplane, and the stewardess was walking by just like, what are you doing? Are you insane?
The answer is yes. You are, in fact, insane.
Oh my gosh, I know. When I was in college and I was studying marketing, my original plan was to be like a crisis PR director for an airline. So I've always been really into airline disasters. I don't know why. It's kind of sick. Okay, let's jump into our story. June 10th, 1990. A beautiful Sunday morning in Birmingham, England. For the crew of British Airways Flight 5390 heading to Malaga, Spain, it began like any other day. Old friends about to do a job that they love. Flight attendants Nigel Ogden and Simon Rogers, along with stewardess Sue Gibbons, had worked together on and off for years. They were an experienced, capable team that took pride in its work. As Nigel would later recall, at Birmingham, all of the cabin crew and all of the pilots, they all knew each other. We were all on first-name terms. Simon was a good friend of mine anyway, because we'd just go out for a beer or a curry. Everybody was friendly to everybody else. Man, I love the English. That's the best. I feel like in America it'd be like, she was going for my promotion. The one new member of the group was Alastair Atchison, an experienced co-pilot who'd just driven down from Manchester that morning. He was about to meet Captain Tim Lancaster, a veteran with 21 years of experience as a commercial pilot and over 11,000 flight hours under his belt.
That's a lot of flying.
It's like a lot of flying. The plane they'd be flying was a BAC 111, sometimes called the Jeep of the Skies. I don't know how you feel about that.
Everybody knows my distaste for Jeeps, so.
I don't know if they do, but now they do. Okay. Well, I think they meant it in a positive way, because it was a workhorse known for being easy to maintain with a good safety record. So you got to remember, this is the early 90s. This is back when Jeeps were like indestructible. You could throw your Jeep off the side of a mountain and drive it home.
Good old 4 liters.
I mean, truly. So for those unfamiliar with this aircraft, it's a twin-engine, narrow-body jetliner that was smaller than today's Boeing 737s. Imagine like a regional jet that typically carried around 80 to 100 passengers on shorter routes within Europe. Zach and I live in Colorado Springs, and we often fly from Colorado Springs to Denver to like make a connection somewhere. So this is similar to those types of airplanes that we take. A little bit smaller. The aircraft had 81 passengers on board, along with 6 crew members. Before takeoff, Captain Lancaster looked through a maintenance log, noting that the plane had just come out of maintenance the day before. The work seemed routine, just a windshield change. Nothing to worry about.
Or was it?
That's foreshadowing. Now, when we say windshield, we're talking about the cockpit windows, those huge curved panels of glass that are in front of the plane that give the pilots their view to the outside world. So unlike the small passenger windows that we all look out of when we're flying, these windscreens, they are huge, super heavily reinforced, and they are designed to withstand extreme conditions because obviously they are getting all of that front-on wind of a plane traveling incredibly quickly. They are designed to take wind, bird strikes, temperature variations. At least they are supposed to be. Meanwhile, while our captains are getting settled and they're going through the maintenance logs, passengers were boarding this flight. Many of them were looking forward to a relaxing trip to Spain, and I cannot blame them because what I would give for a relaxing trip in Spain.
I think what you would give for a relaxing trip.
You know, Counting Crows, they have a song called Holiday in Spain, and I could really use a holiday in Spain, so I'm just gonna have that song playing in the background of this episode. One of the passengers was a woman traveling to meet her mother and sister for a girls' week holiday. Another was returning to Spain to see grandchildren. These are completely ordinary people that are expecting to be on a completely ordinary flight. Do you ever think about that when you're boarding a plane? Like,
what people are expecting and where they're going?
Yes, like what their story is. You know, we're all getting on this plane. We are all assuming this is just going to be a routine, normal flight. Are we all going to have to, like, save each other at some point on this flight? I don't know. Maybe I do because I write an aviation disaster podcast. Okay.
And I don't even have to think about what people are doing because I just talk to them and end up in their weddings.
No. I don't want to talk to anybody on a plane. I immediately put my headphones in and have do not talk to me face on. And Zach will make friends with everybody on that plane by the time we get off. It's so charming and so annoying. All right, well, on this flight, the passengers are getting settled in. They went through the usual pre-flight routine. The flight attendants are demonstrating the safety procedures while, predictably, no passengers pay attention. One passenger later recalled seeing another traveler casually reading the Times during the safety demonstration because this is pre-iPad. Most people were not paying attention because typically they'd all flown before and they considered everything to be routine, right? Always pay attention to the safety demonstrations, folks. Always. At approximately 7:20 a.m. local time, so this here's, an early-ish flight. I take my usual flight I take is at 6 a.m. So 7:20 sounds like a dream. British Airways Flight 5390 began its takeoff roll. Co-pilot Atchison handled the takeoff, and as the plane climbed through the morning sky, Captain Lancaster made a brief announcement. Psst. Ladies and gentlemen, well, he has an accent. Ladies and gentlemen, this is... that was like really bad Cockney. I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. My name is Tim Lancaster. Welcome aboard this British Airways flight to Spain. The plane was climbing steadily toward its cruising altitude of 23,000 feet. They expected to be in Spain in just over 2 hours. The aircraft reached 17,300 feet, and the pilots engaged the autopilot. Captain Lancaster removed his shoulder straps, and he loosened his seatbelt as they settled in for what should have been a routine flight.
Should have been.
Should have been. It's not gonna be. For those who aren't familiar with the cockpit of an airplane, let me explain the restraint systems that pilots use. There are typically two components. There is the lap belt, which works just like the seat belts that passengers use. And there are shoulder harnesses, and those resemble the upper portion of a car's seat belt. So the shoulder straps are crucial during takeoff and landing, but typically pilots loosen them during the cruise for comfort and so that they can reach controls more easily. So we are 13 minutes now after takeoff, and flight attendant Nigel Ogden entered the cockpit to ask the pilots what they'd like to drink. The pilots requested tea because they are classy, and Nigel mentioned their breakfast would be ready in a few minutes. I love this. They're literally getting like a hot breakfast and tea. What a dream. It's now 7:33 a.m. The aircraft was climbing through 17,300 feet, just 5,000 feet from their assigned altitude. But then in a split second, everything changed. With a huge explosion, the captain's windshield blew out completely into the sky. Kaboom. Like, big kaboom. Almost immediately, a white fog formed throughout the cabin. That's what happens when there's a sudden drop in pressure and moisture in the air condenses. It's kind of like what happens when you open your freezer door on a humid day and then you just see that, like, cloud of mist come out of it.
Well, I suppose when you're at 17,000 feet, you're up in the clouds anyway that are going to be...
Freaking freezing.
Freaking
freezing. Yes, very cold. I'm going to take just a second to kind of explain cabin pressurization, because we've all heard like, oh, when the cabin pressure changes, the little oxygen mask will drop. But what actually does that mean? So commercial aircraft fly at altitudes where the air is too thin for humans to breathe, often above 30,000 feet. Zach and I have been above 14,000 feet because we live in Colorado, and we have been to like the top of Pikes Peak, and I've hiked a couple 14ers, and it is extremely hard to breathe at 14,000 feet. So yeah, 30,000 feet, forget about it. At these heights, the outside air pressure is about a third of what we experience at sea level. To keep everybody conscious, which is critical, the aircraft maintains a higher pressure inside the cabin than outside, typically equivalent to the pressure at like 6,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level. So, like, nice.
Sounds easy for us. We live there.
I mean, yes, like, we're groovy. We just can cruise there. This pressure difference means that air is constantly trying to escape from inside the plane to lower pressure environment outside. It's like air rushing out of a balloon as soon as you let go of the opening. So when a sudden breach occurs in the aircraft, you opened the balloon, that rush of air can be incredibly violent. What aviation experts call explosive decompression. One passenger described feeling an intense stomach and body shaking thud, followed by the plane starting to judder. Many initially thought a bomb had exploded.
Is that what pushed the windshield out in the first place? Is the change in pressure? They just replaced the windshield and then the inside pressure was trying to push outside?
I love this. So you guys, Zach's a mechanic, but he's not just a mechanic. He's like brilliant engineer mind kind of mechanic. So you are already getting into the meat of this, my love. We are going to go through a whole investigation about exactly what happened, but you just keep marinating on that thought. Right now, we need to figure out what's going to happen with this plane because it's still in the air and like crazy things are happening. What happened in the next few seconds was pure chaos. The explosive decompression created a pressure difference that acted like a giant vacuum cleaner. So at cruising altitude, the pressure inside an aircraft is maintained at around 8 pounds per square inch, while outside, it's about 3.5 pounds. This difference is what keeps everyone comfortable, but it also means that air is constantly trying to escape from inside the plane. Captain Tim Lancaster, who had loosened his seatbelt. Do we remember that? When he loosened his seatbelt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, he was violently sucked toward the opening where the windshield had been, like a vacuum. The 310 mile per hour wind punched him through the hole. His upper body was forced out of the aircraft while his legs caught on the flight controls. That's insane. His upper body out. His legs connected just by chance to the flight controls, and that is the only thing keeping him from being completely ejected.
So
right?
He's kind of being folded like a lawn chair, but backwards.
Yes, he kind of is. And then what's worse is that because his legs are connected to the controls and he's being forced kind of up and out, he now has the plane stuck into a dive because he has jammed the controls in a forward position.
You know, I picture that in a straight nosedive of a plane, the last place I want to be is on the nose.
Yeah, no, it's like super, super bad. And in the process of all of this, just to make it better, he also accidentally disconnected the autopilot.
Ugh.
So...
Guy, learn how to use your feet.
Oh my God, poor Tim. Poor Captain Tim. All right. So I'm going to super quick explain what the control column is because it's important with his legs tangled in it. So obviously it's the steering wheel of an aircraft, but it does not look like that. It looks more like a joystick or a yoke. And when it's pushed forward, it points the nose of the plane down. And when it is pulled backwards towards your body, towards a person, then the plane goes up. Correct. With the captain's legs jammed against it, the plane was now headed downward in a completely uncontrolled descent. So all of a sudden, our co-pilot, Alastair Atchison, finds himself fighting for control in hurricane force winds. There is no time to think about the captain, who is now half outside the aircraft. His body just exposed to the elements at more than 17,000 feet. That's nuts. The throttles are jammed forward, increasing the speed to nearly 400 miles per hour in a dive.
Is that why there was that speed increase? Is just because they're also in that descent there? You're just picking up speed rapidly as you're falling, basically? They're free falling at that point?
Yes.
With thrust?
Yeah. I mean, they were going fast before, but now they're going just like stupid fast. So throttles obviously are the controls that determine how much power the engines produce, similar to an accelerator pedal in your car. With these pushed to the maximum setting, the plane is essentially gas pedal to the floor. So not only are we in a dive down, but now we're flooring it, going as quick as we can, down.
Well, we're going down.
Oh boy. Meanwhile, our poor flight attendant Nigel witnessed the unthinkable. So he peeks into the flight deck and he sees this insanity. He said, all I could see was Tim out the window. I'm like, that is so scary. It's so bad. Without hesitation, Nigel jumped into action. This man is who I want in a crisis. I have so much respect for Nigel. He put one foot on the captain's footwell and the other one down the side of his seat. And Nigel just held on to him. before he got sucked out completely. So Nigel's now holding on to the captain for dear life outside a 390 to 400 mile per hour blast of wind at negative 2.6 degrees Fahrenheit, that is minus 17 degrees Celsius, was smashing into Captain Tim Lancaster's body, just annihilating this poor man. The bone-chilling cold and violent force is dang near impossible to endure. Like, that's crazy. To put this into perspective, this kind of temperature is about the temperature inside your freezer.
I'm still hung up on the mile an hour because just from days in riding motorcycles, I mean, they said that if you were going about 200 miles an hour, if you stuck your head up above the windscreen, made yourself a little less aerodynamic, you would be just ripped off the motorcycle. It's like equivalent to like an F3 Hurricane or something like that.
Yes. I mean, you're spot on. Like, we have to think these conditions are completely nuts. And they have no visibility of him. He is like outside of the plane, and they are just holding onto this poor man's legs.
For all they know, all there is legs.
That's okay. Yes, that's what I would be thinking. I would be like, there's gonna not be the rest of a human being attached to this part
Captain,
that I can see.
Are you okay?
Oh, the captain is not okay. Obviously, as we just heard, he's having a very bad time. The tornado raging through the cockpit was giving Atchison major problems. So this is our co-pilot now. He's obviously having some serious issues controlling the aircraft. Here's the irony. This poor man is trying to tell air traffic control what is happening, but because he's in a hurricane, they can't hear him. They can't hear him. He is alone on this island. The plane is diving through some of the busiest air lanes in the world. This is like the highway, the interstate of the air. And he is just in a nosedive through this thing. The situation could not have been more desperate, period.
He's being that terrible driver that's cutting from the far left lane all the way to, oh, I need to exit 10 feet ago.
Come on, Atchison. Get it together, my guy. We're not going to shame the hero of this story. Okay, in the cabin.
Nigel sounds like the hero.
Oh my God, we love Nigel too. In the cabin, passengers were experiencing an absolute nightmare. One remembered we were just diving, really. And then it started to judder. I feel like this is like a cool English word that we don't use that they like using, because this is now the second quote that has the term judder.
I just feel so juddery.
And here is everybody's worst fear, one of their worst fears on a plane. The oxygen masks come down. Those never come down, and it's like confetti, and it's like, surprise! We're celebrating Jan's birthday. No. The oxygen masks come down, and you're like, we're gonna die on this airplane. As the plane continues its rapid descent, Captain Lancaster remained pinned to the outside of the aircraft by the force of the wind, enduring conditions that are just unbelievable, like unimaginable.
Unfathomable.
I hate wind. I step outside and it's a little bit windy and I don't want to walk my dog. This dude, like, I cannot wrap my brain around what's happening to this guy. From the cabin, lead steward John Hayward saw the chaos in the cockpit, and we have another hero. This story's full of heroes. So the flight deck door had fallen forward and was now trapped between the door frame and the throttles.
Jeez.
So just like more chaos is happening on this plane. John had to stamp on it twice before it broke into pieces, allowing him to enter. It's just like nothing can go right.
And then suddenly a door splinter shoots out the window.
Yeah, right. No. And it lodged itself in. No. That's the end of the door. Looking for any way to help, John noticed the observer's seat on the wall of the flight deck. This is so smart. He put his arms through the seat belt to create
an anchor.
He created an anchor point, giving them all something more stable to hold on to. So think about this. Nigel and John are now creating basically a human chain, trying to hold on to the pilot's legs, and John has latched himself to this seatbelt to create an anchor. It's brilliant. The observer seat, for those that are unfamiliar with cockpit layouts, is an extra seat in the cockpit. It's meant for instructors, check pilots, other crew members. I think it's also referred to as a jump seat, but don't quote me on that because I do not work in the airline industry, but I do believe that sometimes it's called a jump seat. I learned that from the excellent movie Catch Me If You Can. Okay. Which is, I don't think I should be getting factual airline information from. Woof. Co-pilot Atchison, who had never flown with this crew before. Do you remember that? They all were homies. They all knew each other.
Except for this outsider.
And then this poor co-pilot is brand new to the gang. And now all of a sudden, he's in this situation. It's just wild.
Maybe that's why this happened. That was just like their test. Can you hang?
Yeah, this is their initiation. Are you cool enough to go get frozen yogurt with us later? I don't know. Okay.
You can't sit with us.
Co-pilot Atchison is not going to technically sit with them right now because he has to leave them to their own devices and focus on getting the plane to safety. So he really cannot be dealing with the captain out the window situation. So he gets full control of the throttles because John and Nigel are able to wrench the captain's feet away from the control column. So between the two of them and the anchor point, they're able to figure that out. So that's wonderful.
That's step one.
Step one.
No longer have to go 400 miles an hour.
Thank you. Down. Straight down. So that's good. But instead of slowing down, Atchison decided to continue the rapid descent. Gasp.
How dare he?
What is up his sleeve? Don't worry, you guys. This was a calculated decision. It would quickly take him out of the way of other air traffic. Remember, he's in the middle of the crazy intersection. And bring the aircraft to a lower altitude where oxygen equipment wouldn't be needed. So huge props to Atchison because there are two major issues happening right now. One, a mid-air collision, which would be absolutely catastrophic. And two, the people on the plane cannot breathe right now. Those are two significant problems. So
I also cannot breathe. Sorry for anybody that hears me sniffle.
And I wish we could be like, oh, it's just like he's not feeling good. It'll be better. It won't. This is just how Zach breathes. This is just the sound of him. All right. So Atchison, being so smart, he takes us down to a lower elevation. He's got oxygen on the brain. Staying too long at high elevation risked oxygen starvation, especially since this aircraft is a little older and it wasn't fully equipped with oxygen for all passengers. At high altitudes, there is not enough oxygen in the air for humans to remain conscious. The higher you go, the less time you have. At 18,000 feet, you might have 20 to 30 minutes without supplemental oxygen. At 25,000 feet, that drops to 3 to 5 minutes. Above 30,000 feet, forget it. You got like less than a minute. While passenger oxygen masks provide temporary protection, they are typically designed to last only long enough for the plane to descend to breathable altitude. That is a little-known airline fact, folks. That oxygen mask is not going to keep you alive forever, okay? You put the mask on, and it has enough oxygen in it to keep you going for about 15 minutes typically. So it is critical that pilots get down to a lower altitude very quickly. The airspeed indicator went into the red as they plummeted. Just sirens going crazy. The airplane is like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? I am not meant to do this. In the cabin, poor flight attendants Sue Gibbons and Simon Rogers, who were trying to prepare the passengers for what they fully believed would be an emergency landing, if they were lucky enough to make it to like a quote unquote landing. So they're dealing with the chaos in the cabin. The plane dived to 11,000 feet in just 2.5 minutes.
Well, that doesn't sound as dramatic in my head as I was picturing it. I mean, obviously it is, but you said they were at 17,300 or something?
Yes.
And they got down to
11 in 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, that's
a steep descent, but that's not like no straight down kind of stuff.
I wouldn't like to do that. I'll put it that way. I don't want to be on a plane that's doing that. That would freak me out.
I would enjoy doing that if it was planned, if it was supposed to be that way.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I don't really like falling, so I'm just going to opt out of that whole activity. As they leveled out and slowed to 170 miles per hour, which is...
That's a big slowdown.
Thank you. I was waiting for some sort of reaction from you. Yes, we called that a hard brake. The captain's body was no longer pinned to the roof by the force of the wind, and it slid around to now the side of the plane. Working his way from the back of the cabin, Steward Simon Rogers now caught sight of the cockpit for the first time, and what he saw was beyond anything he could have imagined. Nigel, who had been holding on to the captain with all his strength, was beginning to lose his grip. His arms were aching terribly, but he was determined not to let go until he was sure that the captain wouldn't fly out of the window. The stress on the flight attendants was enormous. They were all terrified. They were wondering if Tim would die, if he was already dead, if they would all die. And they knew it was up to Atchison to fly the plane and up to the three of them to hold on to this man. What the crew witnessed next was really horrifying. The captain's arms were flailing wildly outside of the aircraft.
Yeah, I could picture that. I love driving down the interstate with my window down and, putting an open palm out there and then just feeling that wind resistance, even at, 85 or 90 miles an hour. That'll just rip your arm back if you're actually limp.
That's brutal. The captain's eyes were wide open, but unblinking, even as his face smashed repeatedly against the side screen. The terrible realization hit them. They believed he was dead. Nigel was reaching his physical limits and told the others that he couldn't hold on any longer. He had lost all feeling in his arms. I mean, it's so cold. Like, the wind is hitting you. He's holding on to this poor guy. I can't believe he held on as long as he did. But in any case, what this means, like any good organized team, they had to reorganize. So Simon sat in the jump seat and he fastened himself in, which makes him like a human anchor. He's not just like arm through. He is strapped in. They hooked the captain's feet over the back of the captain's seat, and Simon put his hands on top, holding his ankles down. So, like... That's a sight. It's like a wheelbarrow game, I should not be laughing because this is so fucked. But it is kind of like that. I laugh because it's terrible. Meanwhile, in the passenger cabin, people were terrified and confused. When one passenger asked a flight attendant what was happening, they received the shocking reply that the captain might be dead. Now, it's a heck of a way to deliver that news. I gotta say.
I'm not sure, but the captain might be dead.
Oh my gosh. Is that the best way to deliver that? I don't know. It's not the way I would do it, I'm going to be honest. Okay. And obviously the passenger was stunned by this news. Just minutes earlier, they had heard that captain captain welcoming them aboard, describing the lovely day, the blue skies, encouraging them to relax and enjoy the flight. You got to think they are not that long into this flight.
Yeah, what's the total time roughly at this point, if we know?
So the flight took off at 7:20. At 7:33 is when the windshield blew out, 13 minutes after takeoff. And all of this happened very, very quickly.
Yeah. But
So,
then you add
I
the
don't know.
altitude
We're like-
drop. I mean, they're like 18 minutes in max.
Yeah, we're between 15 and 18 minutes. So, yeah, the passengers are pretty stunned. Simon and co-pilot Atchison now faced one of their most difficult decisions. What do they do with the lifeless body of their captain? No words were spoken, but for a moment the thought passed between them that perhaps the best thing to do would just be to let him go. But Atchison made his decision. No, hold on to him. Don't worry, don't go, oh, because this was not an act of compassion. There's a very practical reason that he said this. Now remember, he has transitioned from being on top to the side. What would gravity do?
Take it to the engine.
Boom, baby. Our poor captain would have likely been sucked into the engine. So he could have either damaged the wing with like crazy force. I mean, you got to think the wing is used to like small birds, a freaking human flying really
Bird
fast.
strikes are still crazy dangerous. So
It's true. Like a big bird will fuck up an airplane, as we know by an episode that we'll probably cover at some point in the future. Him getting sucked into the engine would be catastrophic, absolutely catastrophic. So we wanted to avoid that from happening. And that is why they continue to
can't let the
hold
captain
on.
ruin their day twice.
Oh my God. Woof. Oh no. Co-pilot Atchison had managed to get the plane down to 11,000 feet. Without the captain to help, he was operating the aircraft systems from memory and navigating around Heathrow, some of the most congested airspace in the world. So you got to think about this. Typically, in a cockpit, you have the pilot, you have a co-pilot, and one of them is doing steering and controls and whatnot, and the other one has like a manual or is looking things up and checking other things.
Seeing
it's like
radar, all kinds of stuff.
100%. Zach and I are hobby race car drivers, and you know, this makes me think of rally, like a really good rally team. You got a driver and you got somebody who's like doing the navigating. Oh, and poor Atchison has a nobody. He's flying literally solo. After 7 minutes out of contact with the ground, he was finally able to hear air traffic control. Speedbird 5390, can you accept landing in Southampton? Atchison replied, I am familiar with Gatwick. Would appreciate Gatwick. Atchison wanted to land at Gatwick Airport, as he'd flown there many times before, but Southampton was closer, and even though he'd never flown there, he knew he had to get down fast. The trouble was, all of the maps and charts had blown out of the window with the captain. Only the air traffic controller could guide him now. He turned the plane. That was our pit bull. They are like the loudest sires in the world. Okay. So he only had the help of the air traffic controller to guide him. But he does end up turning the plane towards Southampton. For those that are unfamiliar with aviation, pilots rely heavily on aeronautical charts. Whew, I'm glad I nailed that one. Specialized maps that show runways, navigation aids, terrain features, airspace boundaries. They are basically a pilot's equivalent to road maps, but they are way more detailed, way more complex, take, training to read and understand. But without these crucial references, Atchison was essentially driving in an unfamiliar city without any GPS or a map. Just going for it. Shooting his shot.
At least he didn't have any stoplights.
Oh my God. At least. Always looking on the bright side, you. Air traffic controller Andy Rundle took over. Speedbird 5390 identified on handover from London radar 6 miles east of Southampton Airfield. That's what Andy said, but it was in a British accent. When Atchison spoke, the stress in his voice was freaking obvious because this dude had had a time. Rundle recalled that he was obviously under a fair bit of pressure. Like,
I should say so.
Yeah, bud. The controller asked for more information. What is your number of persons on board? We have 84 passengers on board. I've been advised it's a pressurization failure. Is that the only problem? The controller inquired.
Might have one or two other problems.
Yeah, and Atchison's response left the controller stunned. The captain is half out the airplane. I believe he's dead. Rundle later described his reaction as one of complete disbelief. This was something that you see in films, but you really never see this in real life. Atchison requested emergency facilities for the captain. He's reaffirming that, and he's saying that they're going to need an ambulance waiting for them when they land. Atchison asked, could you confirm that the length of runway at Southampton is acceptable for a BAC 111? Yes, it is acceptable, replied the controller, promising to provide the figure shortly. As long as we have at least 2,500 meters, I am happy, said Atchison. I cannot believe that he is, so calm. But the controller had bad news, I'm afraid. We have a maximum of 1,800.
Nice.
So...
hit them brakes hard.
This is bad. This is a real serious concern. The plane was above its maximum landing weight, being full of fuel, because it was only in the air for 20 minutes. So it's already way, way heavy. And then it can't dump fuel like larger aircraft. So if the runway wasn't long enough, Atchison faced the possibility that the aircraft will not be able to stop, the tires might burst, or they could just go right off the end of the runway to make a really bad day even worse. Larger aircraft often have the ability to dump fuel, which feels very bad for the environment to me, but I might have questioned.
That's the next
things.
generation's issue, as long as we live.
Yeah, I don't love it. Anyway, I understand why it's necessary for emergency landings, but it's still totally crazy. Atchison had no choice. They are approaching Southampton, and he's going to have to kind of figure it out. The air traffic controller assured him that you are number one traffic. This situation was completely unprecedented, as aviation expert David Learmont would later point out. All airline pilot training is done with 2 pilots, both as competent mentors in the cockpit, one flying the airplane and the other one doing the emergency drills. What you actually had was the captain hanging out of the window, one person hanging onto his legs, and Alastair flying the airplane with nobody else to talk to. I mean, this is just unbelievable.
I don't think talking to somebody is his big issue there.
All right, we are now 5 miles from touchdown. Atchison pleaded with the controller to talk him down all the way, saying that he needed all the help he could get. The controller stayed with him, providing constant guidance until Atchison had visual of the runway. Only then did the controller fall silent, allowing the co-pilot to concentrate on landing. Only 32 minutes after takeoff, with 81 terrified passengers, a nearly full fuel tank, and the captain partially ejected from the window, Alastair Atchison attempted the most difficult landing of his career. At 8:55 a.m., flight British Airways 5390 made a perfect landing at Southampton Airport. He stuck the landing perfectly. Immediately, of course, emergency vehicles are surrounding the plane. Firefighters remove the body of the captain, and they lead the passengers and crew away. One passenger recalled seeing the co-pilot, the man who, if it wasn't for him, we would have been on the other side by now. He was walking down the runway very slowly, shaking his head. There was an ambulance worker with him, with his arm around the shoulders of the co-pilot. Oh my gosh, I cannot even imagine. So our co-pilot had carried out a remarkable piece of flying, almost unprecedented in aviation history. He had piloted his plane without a captain, who had undergone physical stresses that nobody could have been expected to survive. The forces that Captain Lancaster's body endured were extreme. He was subjected to a two-pronged assault. The physical violence of being blown out of the plane, then the extreme cold and lack of oxygen at 17,000 feet. Medical experts believed that he would have passed out very quickly, first into semi-consciousness and then full unconsciousness. His core body temperature would fall, obviously, and they figured that he would have finally died, probably from extreme cold.
Terrible way to die.
It's really not good. So as this crisis is unfolding, accident investigators are immediately rushing to the scene to try and figure out what on earth happened. I think that's the question we're all asking. On the ground at Southampton Airport, the search for clues began. Initial investigations showed no distortion to the frame of the windshield or the windscreen. So the frame looks good, ruling out a problem with the structure. The fact that there were no shards of glass also eliminated the possibility of a bird strike.
Just clean popped out. They used bathroom caulking instead of real sealant.
All right, so let's meet one of our senior investigators with the Air Accident Investigation Branch, Stuart Culling. So he had very little to go on initially, but one of his first clues came from the log that was recovered from the plane. He knew that the aircraft had been serviced just the day before and that a windscreen had been replaced. He immediately paid a visit to the British Airways maintenance hangar at Birmingham. Culling was determined to speak with the maintenance worker, specifically who had installed the windscreen. However, there was a slight complication. The worker had been on the night duty and had finished his shift at roughly the same time that the incident occurred. He needed to get some sleep before he was interviewed. In the meantime, Culling made sure that all paperwork and records related to the aircraft were secured so that they could not be accessed or altered. When the maintenance manager finally arrived for the interview, Culling started with general questions about the procedure for replacing a windshield. I wonder if it's the same as a car windshield. I'm so curious. During the interview, Culling received a phone call with crucial information. The windscreen had been found, along with about 30 bolts. Most alarming, the majority of these bolts were one size too small in diameter. What? You can't be doing that.
Can't be using an M10 when you need an M12.
Thank you. Not okay. On some planes, windscreens are fitted from the inside and use the internal pressure inside of the cabin to keep them in place. But on this plane, the windscreen is bolted on from the outside. So any weakness in the bolts meant that the pressure inside of the plane, which we've talked about, it's like that balloon where you let go and all of the air comes rushing out. It's pushing and pushing and pushing, and it just blew the windshield right out. Poof. I mean, it's just crazy. Culling confronted the maintenance manager with this discovery about the wrong bolts. The manager was initially in disbelief, insisting that he'd used exactly the same bolts, and he had been very careful with the installation. He was a professional guy, and he was very serious about doing things properly. So obviously to be told that you did something like this is really bad, especially when you hear about what happened to the captain. I'd be pretty bummed.
Yeah, captain's got 37 broken bones because of you.
Yeah, this is like not good. By comparing the maintenance manual to what the engineer had told him, Culling identified what had gone terribly wrong. There were approximately 13 different mistakes in the maintenance procedure that, had any one of them been caught, could have prevented the accident.
Wow.
So here's what happened in detail, folks. The engineer had come early for his shift and around 4 a.m. had begun removing the old windscreen. The hangar was full, and the plane had been pushed against the hangar door, making the windshield difficult to reach. This is why you need a big enough shop. You can't just be pushing planes to the corner like that. It's like stretched across the fuselage He had problems controlling his screwdriver. I'm going to ask you as a mechanic, Zach, is that a shit excuse? Is that like the most pathetic thing you've ever heard? He can't control his screwdriver.
I have had to put myself in some positions where I can't even look at the car. I have to have my arm twisted and ripped around the opposite way just to be able to use these fingers.
Oh, yeah. Well, this guy was in a corner, and he couldn't control his screwdriver.
Hey, vey. Well, anyway, the windscreen he removed had itself been fitted with the wrong length bolts, but they were still strong enough to hold the windscreen in place. It had survived without issue for 4 years. So that by itself is really nuts. Okay.
They were able to reach the screws.
He was obviously able to reach the screws because he was able to see what screws they were, and then he replaced the old bolts with new ones that are, again, the wrong size. So instead of checking the parts catalog, he went directly to the parts store and he matched the bolts by eye. Oh my goodness gracious, it's giving me so much anxiety. The store manager knew which bolts should have been used and advised him, but the engineer ignored this advice. In this case, when this guy walked into the Home Depot, you do not know more.
Not everybody can be Ron Swanson.
It's so true. He drove to the other side of the airport to search for matching bolts. It was now about 5:15 a.m., and in a dark corner of the hangar, he continued looking for new bolts identical to the wrong ones that he had removed from the plane. But in the poor lighting, his luck ran out. He thought the new bolts matched the old ones, which were still wrong, but they didn't.
Oh, so he was wrong from
He was wrong twice. Yes, we're now double wrong. We are wrong squared. He selected bolts that were just over 2/100ths of an inch too narrow. A tiny difference with catastrophic consequences. To put this into perspective, 2/100ths of an inch is about half a millimeter, roughly the thickness of 5 sheets of paper. It's a difference so small that you probably wouldn't notice it by eye unless you're my husband, especially in poor lighting. But it was enough to completely compromise the strength of the windscreen installation. Returning to the aircraft, he stretched over the plane and began installing these new bolts, working at an awkward angle. He couldn't see that the new bolts didn't fit correctly. He finished at 6 a.m. Having completed the work on schedule, the plane was now ready to be handed over to the captain and his crew. But it was a disaster waiting to happen, as we obviously know. The next morning, as the flight climbed to 17,300 feet, the difference in pressure between the sealed hole and the thin atmosphere outside was increasing rapidly. And Zach, as you called when we were like 4.5 minutes into the episode, it was absolutely a pressure issue.
Science, bitch.
Science, bitch. This pressure was looking for a weakness, and it found one of those incorrectly sized bolts. For our investigator, Stuart Culling, finding out what happened that night was only the first step. He needed to understand the deeper reasons behind the horrific sequence of events, why the engineer did what he did, and whether this was an isolated incident or a symptom of a much bigger problem. Like, if this is happening inside of this factory, it could be really, really catastrophic. In what was at the time a very revolutionary approach, Culling brought in a behavioral psychologist to analyze why the maintenance engineer made the mistakes he did. So that's like a really fascinating thing to do, especially at this time. This is 1990, right? Human factors is the study of how people interact with systems, equipment, and procedures, recognizing that even the most skilled professionals are still human at the end of the day. Everybody has limitations. Everybody is able to make mistakes. It looks at how factors like fatigue, stress, workplace culture, cognitive biases, all of those can affect performance and safety. So this is the science of understanding why smart people sometimes do dumb shit. The investigation revealed that the maintenance team in Birmingham was under significant pressure, and this is very similar to what we're hearing currently at Boeing. So
okay.
this is like we're getting ties to kind of current issues that we're having in airplane maintenance and safety. They had a lot of work. It was all done at night, and often it was more than they could reasonably handle. They had developed shortcuts, as many humans do. They just figured out, work smarter, not harder, except it didn't work out that way, clearly. The engineer admitted that he trusted his own judgment more than official procedures. This psychological approach to the investigation took air accident prevention to a new level by understanding the pressures that led to an otherwise proficient engineer making a really significant mistake. While being fully certain that he was doing the right thing, the investigators could recommend changes to prevent similar accidents from happening in the future. So, in the aftermath, the crew obviously was treated as heroes. Alastair Atchison was awarded the Polaris Award for his exceptional airmanship, as well as the Queen's Commendation for valuable service in the air. When the crew returned to Birmingham Airport, they received an emotional welcome. As they walked through the building, the entire airport fell silent, and then all the ground staff and check-in personnel stood and applauded them. It was really an incredibly moving moment. Their colleagues were applauding a team that had demonstrated the highest level of professionalism that a cabin crew can have by working together through unbelievably extraordinary circumstances, and a co-pilot who took control and worked alone to bring everybody safely to the ground. The crew members each dealt with their experiences differently. For Nigel, our amazing flight attendant who was the first one to grab the captain, the impact was incredibly profound. He later admitted that he thought about the incident every single day, and he believed that it would affect him until the end of his days. Nigel, along with Simon and Sue, eventually left their flying careers behind. John remained with British Airways as the chief steward, but transferred to long-haul flights, as those aircraft had no resemblance to the plane that he was in. I think it's fair to be like, I don't love this type of airplane. This kind of freaks me out. All right, let's talk about our co-pilot, Alastair. He obviously saved the flight. He continued his flying career with British Airways, later joining Channel Express, which became Jet2, and he flew until his retirement on his 65th birthday in 2015. Jeez. I know. As for the captain, Tim Lancaster, he lived.
I'm not sure how. How many broken bones did he have?
Okay, let's talk about what happened, because this is obviously completely insane. As his apparently lifeless body was taken from the plane, he was actually beginning to emerge from his horrific adventure. This is what Tim remembered about the ordeal. There was this big bang, a noise, all of the air escaping. I remember watching the windscreen move away from the aircraft, and then it had gone. Like a bullet, it had disappeared into the distance. He was aware of being outside of the airplane, but remarkably said, "That didn't really bother me a great deal." Excuse me? It bothers me a great deal.
That would be a big bother.
I'm extremely bothered. His most vivid memory was struggling to breathe because he was facing into the airflow. So he actually managed to turn his body so he was looking back along the top of the aircraft, and he was then able to breathe. The human body's response to extreme conditions is so fascinating and sometimes incredibly surprising. In frigid temperatures, the body begins to shut down non-essential functions to preserve core temperature and protect vital organs. Essentially, hibernation. Blood flow is redirected from the extremities to the brain, heart, and lungs. This physiological response, combined with the relatively short duration of exposure, we know that it was about 22 minutes total, likely helped Lancaster survive what absolutely should have been a completely fatal event.
Yeah, that just sounds insane.
Okay, how many bones do you think he broke?
All right. If does each individual bone in the back count?
No, you can just say, like, his back. And
I would guess that he has some fractures in his skull and cheekbones, and his back was broken, some ribs.
Okay.
So I'm going to say, like, I don't know, 10 or 12 bones.
Yeah, it's like, that's a lot, you know. He went through a really traumatic thing.
Mm-hmm.
The physical trauma that he suffered was extremely limited. A bone fracture in his right arm and wrist, a broken left thumb, a bit of bruising, some frostbite, and a bit of shock.
He had less shock than me.
Within 5 months, he'd made a full recovery and was flying again.
Nope.
And he continued his career until reaching British Airways mandatory retirement age. Then he continued flying for EasyJet until 2008.
Wow.
Thank God they held on to his legs. They held on to his legs, and he lived. He lived.
It's like he had a Subaru.
Yes, he did.
They lived.
Yes, and he lived. I'm so glad that we get to start off this podcast with a survival story because I'm going to be honest, many of the stories that we will cover on this show
It's not
will
100% survival.
not have happy endings. So it's fun for us to start off and be like, wow, it's a miracle and everyone lived and everything's great. Because it's gonna get dark. That is our story for today.
That's a heck of a story.
I know.
I can't believe he lived and
He lived.
only had a couple broken things going on. No major bones.
He lived. And the whole thing happened because of incorrectly sized bolts.
Pay your mechanics more.
Okay, well, all right. Okay. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media, and our handles will be in the show notes. Join us next week when we will be discussing another incredible aviation incident. And actually, I'll give you guys a little spoiler because I'm really excited. Zach and I are taking a vacation. We are going to Anguilla, which is part of the Caribbean islands. And I am going to tell Zach a story about the airport that we are flying into in Anguilla. Okay. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected because not every trip reaches its final destination.